Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and with me as always is Milly.
Hi.
And of course we have Rhianna.
Hi.
So our special guest today is Bryan Kling. They are currently touring for Scooby-Doo and the Lost City of Gold as Shaggy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. We're so excited to speak with you today because we've been following this show very closely and just getting so hyped about it. So I suppose kicking off with my first question was that through researching on the Scooby and the Lost City of Gold website, we're aware that you're an actor, singer, and producer. Was kind of, doing this trio always the plan, or did one kind of lead to the other?
It's definitely one led to the other kind of thing. I actually kind of got started in theater later than most people I know, in the sense that I kind of like when I was 19-ish, I decided, okay, I'm gonna go to theater school. Why not? And that's where I started discovering music theater and getting into that scene a little bit. And then I went to theater school, studied for a couple of years, and then one of the things that they taught us in theater school, or at least at Randolph College in Toronto, which is where I studied, was one of the best ways to work is to make your own, which kind of then led to producing and all of the other things, just because I wanted to start making work as much as I was being involved in work. So it kind of just became my reality.
And in terms of your journey to get to where you are now, were there any actors or singers that you looked up to as a child that may have influenced your decisions?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I'm not sure about actors. I thought about this question when I saw it on the sheet that you sent me, but because I think it's kind of the same thing. Because I started so late, it's hard to know what my influences were. I mean, I always loved Freddie Mercury and Queen growing up, and that sort of like showmanship. And I've always been way more attracted to musicians who have a sort of theatrical quality to them and things that have a story. Like Peter Gabriel was a huge fan of mine. Well, not a fan of mine. I was a fan of his. I wish he was a fan of mine. Um, yeah. So for me, it's hard to know exactly what propelled me towards sort of being in theater and what inspired me, because I've never been a very musical focused person, because I came into it so late. So like I like musicals and I can listen to them eh, without really any issues. But as far as inspiration goes, I was a classic rock kind of kid. Took my dad's favorite music and kind of ran with that. But I've always had sort of a sort of a penchant for the theatrical, and I think that kind of really comes out. And really, when I look back at my life, it's kind of very clear how I ended up where I ended up.
That's great. And we've seen you played some really iconic characters, including Gaston in a production of Beauty and the Beast. So what was that experience like?
That was a great experience. I really enjoy playing the villains. It's a very fun, and I mean, as you can tell, I have a lower register, lower speaking voice, so I tend to get cast as villains more often. Um, but that was a really great role to play, and to sort of be able to sort of dive into and enjoy. And for some reason, I was salivating a lot more during that show, so there was a lot of and should I say this? There was a lot of spitting going on stage, which to me at least, I just take that as I was really into the part. So
And like you're saying there, getting cast as villains kind of more frequently, and Gaston being quite a memorable and iconic Disney villain. Are there any other Disney villains that you would like to be able to portray?
oh, definitely Hades from Hercules.
Yes.
That's the best one. That's the dream right there. Um, I mean, if they ever made a Tarzan musical, I mean, Clayton could be fun. He's kind of a really evil character, though. And then, I'm a big fan of these days, at least, of Patrick Page, the obviously the Broadway guy. I don't know what else to call him, but a part of me wants to sort of really practice that lower register so I could eventually be able to do parts like that, like Frollo and Hunchback, and really get into that niche.
Oh wow. Like when you said Hades, I think we can all agree you would make a really great Hades, and hopefully you get to live out like that dream of becoming him, like on stage or however, like whichever form like you take of him. And we only have to like look at the schedule of the shows to notice that they involve so much traveling. And is the touring lifestyle something that you enjoy the most?
I don't mind it too much. I've always liked the open road and sort of just like I can be at peace at just throwing some music into my ears and looking out a window and looking at the countryside and traveling, especially because I've never really been to the United States until this tour. So it's a nice opportunity. And like though a lot of the landscape is relatively mundane, especially in the places that we have been touring, it's still kind of nice to just sort of see it and experience it in that way. It does get tiring for sure. But overall, as long as I maintain sort of that appreciation of the little things, those small towns can be really nice, and exploring just sort of the world in its simplest form is a very beautiful thing. I think if I did it for a very long time, it would definitely get tiring, but for now it's still quite very enjoyable.
That's great that it's still enjoyable. And we know from both the Scooby website and, as you mentioned earlier, you're a graduate of the Randolph College for the Performing Arts. Is there anything you learned whilst there that you feel is really important for aspiring actors to know?
There's a lot of really good things that came out of that. I always find it's very interesting when you think about theater schools specifically, because depending on when you go, the faculty, especially at Randolph, could be very different. So you're going to get a very different experience because every faculty member has their own lived experience. And for me, one of the biggest things that I took away from that is kind of exactly on that point of I had a teacher once who said to the class that he learned more working a regular job than he ever did in any acting class, which then kind of goes to show that if you want to be an actor and you want to sort of be able to portray things like that, you kind of have to have a sense of what it is to be a person, to live a life, to observe other people. And for me personally, that sort of level of observation and just sort of always being aware of what other people are doing has benefited me more than anything else. The other one being what I mentioned earlier is making your own work. And that's really just a level of perseverance. It's like, I want to do this, so I'm going to work, and recognizing that the industry is unfair. It will beat you down, chew you up, and spit you out unless you're insanely lucky. And so perseverance is the biggest friend you have, just recognizing that if you stick to it and you work regardless, and you work regardless of what other people are going to, if they're going to give you a job or not, then you'll be happy and fulfilled. And that kind of ties back to the first question in a way, because one of the big reasons why I got into production is I became, over time, I didn't want to give up on acting, but I also wanted to stay in the same world. And I didn't want to have to depend on other people approving of my performance to have a job. And I also didn't want to work in restaurants anymore.
Well, that's really interesting. I'm sure there's a lot of aspiring actors and even producers watching this that have taken a lot away from that. So thank you so much for sharing. And I suppose, to kind of touch on that, a lot, the main reason why we've reached out to you today is to talk about Scooby-Doo and the Lost City of Gold. And of course, prior to being cast in the Lost City of Gold, did you ever watch any Scooby-Doo growing up? If so, did you have a favorite movie or series?
I did watch Scooby-Doo growing up. I wouldn't say I watched it religiously, but it was definitely one of the shows, because cable TV, whatever was on, and I was never much of a, this is the show I watch it all the time. Like I would watch whenever I was watching TV, I would watch what's on. And if Scooby-Doo came on, I was like, oh yeah, we're watching Scooby-Doo. Is that and the Looney Tunes really for me? That would always win out. And it was the original show. I think for me personally is my favorite, though I do think that as I've researched more on Scooby-Doo since being cast in the show, that the newer iterations of the character are very, very interesting. As when I watched that first original Scooby-Doo, a lot of them feel like kind of still empty blank slates in a certain way. Whereas as the show moved on and each character got their own personality and their own development, which watching my fellow Mystery Inc. in the show, each one has taken those characters and really, really brought those elements right back to it, which is really, really cool and fun to see. But I find the original Scooby-Doo, the mysteries there were always the thing that really grabbed me in, and how how they made the monsters were all really, really cool, and then to see them in that vintage style really spoke to me a lot.
And I suppose, because like you've said, your co-stars have really fleshed out these characters, and of course, the later series as well. Now, through watching the series or even just playing the characters and interacting with the characters, did you ever gain a favorite member of Mystery Inc.?
I mean, I don't want to come off as bias, but it's always been Shaggy. It's always been. I mean, I look at him and I resonate the most with him. He's a tall, lanky guy who wants to just eat and kind of just doesn't he's just sort of looped in, and you know, I always find it really funny because it feels like he's there and he's a part of the team, and he does so much. He accidentally solves so many mysteries, but I don't know. I don't really know what it is about. I think it's all that he's just the way I've always perceived myself, as this tall, lanky person who's a little bit out of his depth, just trying to make it through and figure out what's what.
I mean, the character of Shaggy is maybe perhaps one of the ones that stayed the most consistent throughout the start of the show, of course, being voiced by Casey Kasem at the start. And then we had Matthew Lillard playing him in the 2002 and 2004 film. And then I believe he took over the role perhaps 2007 or thereabouts. And so with the kind of precedent set that someone that's played Shaggy in another media could go on to be the voice of Shaggy. If you were ever approached to be the voice of Shaggy later down the line, is that something that you'd be interested in?
Oh, a million %. I mean, if someone came to me and said, "Yeah, we want you to," I've actually already fantasized about that. To be honest, I have thought to myself, if I do a good enough job, maybe they'll come to me and they'll say, "Hey, come voice Shaggy," and I'd be like, "Absolutely, please." You hear that, Warner Brothers?
Oh gosh, that's great. And so how did you come to be involved in Scooby-Doo and the Lost City of Gold? Was it that you'd already established your interpretation of Shaggy? Was it through a self-tape? Did you have to do any kind of in-person auditions?
Actually, it's really funny because I was at the time currently super swamped working on this project in Toronto. It was the show where we were trying to get the show up in a very, very small amount of time. We had to get all these different moving pieces together, and the audition came out about halfway through that process. So I had no real time to research and do what I needed to do. So the next day I sort of got my things together and I did an audition. I read the script, I learned the songs. And this is actually one of the more peculiar audition stories I have, because I learned the Foodie song from the show, and they also wanted me to learn Fred's song, Do the Scooby-Doo. And so I learned both, but I ended up blowing my voice out on Do the Scooby-Doo. So I couldn't sing it. I said, okay, well, I'm not submitting this because I'm going to put my best foot forward. And oh well, I've got other things I'm worrying about. I just don't have the time to commit to this thing because, I'm going to digress just for a quick second because this kind of goes back to things that I learned. And this learned that kind of from school, but this kind of didn't come from school. This came from practice, which was I got this audition because every day I would scour my regular casting sites for opportunities. And so I found the Scooby-Doo show and I just would submit. I would submit to anything I was applicable for, even if I thought it was a long shot, even if it was in another city. Just because, and so that's how it ended up coming through. Anyway, back to the story. Where was I? I did the audition and I had no clue how to do a Shaggy voice. I'd always had like a penchant for doing voices. Like I was pretty decent at figuring them out and finding a way to bring them into my own body, but I had never done Shaggy's voice. I had no clue how to do it. And I've watched my audition self-tape over and over again and been like, oh, I was not good at it. Oh my gosh. But I did the tape and I sent it out and I totally forgot about it. And I got back to work. And about a week later, they got back to me and they said, hey, we really like your tape. Can you do it again? But would you mind watching an episode of Scooby-Doo? You know, getting a sense of the character, bringing some of that charm to the thing. And so I was like, all right, I can do that. So I sat down and with my breakfast and I watched, what was the episode? It was the one where there's a lighthouse. They go to the lighthouse. It's from the original series. And there's they have to, I don't remember exactly what the mystery is, but there's this sort of lake monster and they have to go into this submarine. And I'll never forget watching this scene. I mean, it was a couple years ago, but still. It made me laugh out loud because Shaggy and Scooby are running away from the monster and they stop because there's a random sandwich bar there and they just make these massive sandwiches mid-chase and then keep running. And I was cackling on my couch. It was alone. It was great. And so then I went and I did the second tape and still didn't really know how to do the voice. But then next thing I knew, they said, yeah, we want you. Yeah, we think you're great. And I got to work on actually kind of trying to understand the character and learning the voice.
That's incredible. And like you said, you then kind of went off to learn the character a little bit more. And I know you said that you had revisited some of the old episodes or movies. So was it, I guess, kind of maybe reframing this question slightly, did you find in particular that the animated movies or the live action ones were most helpful to you?
I found a bit of inspiration in both. The live action I found was more useful because in reality we are doing a live action Scooby-Doo. So to see other actors portray Shaggy in real time is just because like there's certain things that are you can't do or are very tricky to do and maintain a cartoonish aspect or a cartoonish element. And to stick too closely to the original cartoon, there's some things that you simply can't do. And there are things that I've tried really hard to find, like the running on the spot gag. I really wanted there to be a gag in the show where like imitating like when they run through the doors in the hallway, the old bit, and they just keep going. But it's very tricky to make things work and to have it come off that way, unless you have a whole bunch of budget and set pieces built specifically to bring that illusion to life. So I tried very hard to stick more closely to the live action stuff because I found the physicality could come out a bit more by being inspired by those performances.
And given that it's such a well-established character already, like you say, you've managed to get insight from both live action, cartoon, there's already so many adaptations of Shaggy. Did you feel any more pressure given that it's an established character?
Yes, absolutely. When I first started, I really wanted more than anything to get the voice perfect. I wanted it to be exactly the way it should be. I'm still and will likely never be satisfied with it. You know, it could always be a bit more Matthew Lillard-esque. It could always be a bit more Casey Kasem-esque. But you know, it is what it is. It's my version now. It has to be. And a certain part of that is about letting that go and letting go of that pressure that we might put on myself to say, okay, this is the voice. This is me doing Shaggy. And at a certain point, you have to be okay with that. But also making sure the physicality is right and the character is right. Like this is a 60-year-old character at this point who's been done many times. And you know, thankfully, and I'm very grateful for the fans that we have had that have come out to see the show, and people seem to really love it and really like the interpretation. So I'm very grateful for that. And but yes, I felt an immense amount of pressure to really bring it to life, and never externally. It was all internal, and I just really wanted to do this character justice.
Oh, wow. It sounds like you definitely managed to bring your own unique little twist to Shaggy. And from what we've seen review-wise and people who have gone and seen the show in person, they seem to absolutely love your take on Shaggy. So we're so happy that you get to join such an amazing group of people, such as, you know, Billy West and Nick Pilatus, who have played Shaggy. So did you ever try to reach out to any Shaggy alumni for any advice?
I did not. I thought about it. I was like, you know, maybe I just find a way to email Matthew Lillard and see if he'll give me tips on how to do the voice. But you know, I figured, you know, why would they don't know who I am. Why would they answer me? Like, I'm just a little Canadian guy doing a Scooby-Doo show, you know. There's no way. So I thought about it, but I never did. And I think I probably never would have, just because I would be too afraid of bothering them.
And I guess reversing the question a little bit, there's a web series premiering that sees Chris Villain step into the role of Shaggy. And given that you have quite a few Shaggy performances to your name now, do you have any advice for someone who is about to take on the role of Shaggy?
I think I said it before. Really, just make it your own. Obviously, you have to respect the 60 years of the character, but the more you look at everyone who's done it, every version of the character is owned by the person portraying them. Like Casey Kasem's Shaggy. I'm saying that right. It's Casey Kasem, yeah?
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, I was really terrified for a second. But Casey Kasem's Shaggy and Matthew Lillard Shaggy, and I use them specifically because they're, I think, the most, because they're the most like on the top, because he was the first and he did the live action 2000s films. They're very, very different. It's the same character, and you can feel it's the same character. Like even Billy West's Shaggy, it's very Billy West, but it's still Shaggy. It's very Matthew Lillard, but it's still Shaggy. It's, I mean, it's hard to separate Casey Kasem from Shaggy because he invented the character basically. But it's a very different version of Shaggy. And if there was another actor who was Shaggy before that, we'd see an even bigger difference there. So I think as long as you really honor the fact that this guy above all else likes to eat, and you know, is ironically so afraid of ghosts, and yet is a part of a ghost solving mystery team. And you really bring in the love of between Shaggy and Scooby, which I think is actually the crux of the character, that these, like, the bond that they share. I think that's, for me at least, that's what I find is the reason Shaggy exists in the first place, is to really bring life to Scooby-Doo. And I have a little bit of a story actually from my past that, if you don't mind, I'd love to share regarding this exact same thing, where once upon a time, I was doing it was a high school show of it was Charlotte's Web, and I was playing one of the farmers, and there were two farmers. One was the comedic relief, and he was just kind of this sort of you know, he's just a funnier character, and he got so many laughs. The actor, like, people loved his take on the character. And I remember my drama teacher, he was a wonderful drama teacher, pulled me aside at one point and he said, "Hey, I just want you to know that those laughs out there and that applause that he gets, that wouldn't happen without you. You were out there setting up the jokes and are just as much a part of that production and then that character as he is." And you know, I wasn't sad or anything like that. I've never been like a sort of prideful or I knew that, but it was still a really nice thing to hear. And I don't know if this applies directly, but I do find that it's kind of the same kind of relationship between the characters Shaggy and Scooby, where like Scooby-Doo is obviously the main character and the whole thing revolves around him, but that relationship without Shaggy supports Scooby-Doo in so many ways, and their love for each other and their bond really kind of creates that sort of that charm. They're never really apart. They're never apart. Sometimes they're joined by Velma, but they're never separate. And so I really think that the best piece of advice, to come back to the actual question, is really focus on that bond between the two of them, and the rest will come naturally.
Oh wow, thank you for sharing that story, by the way. And you, like, when you were like describing the character of Shaggy, that was exactly, I feel like that's the perfect description, and people should always I feel come back to your description. If they need like help to describe Shaggy, like you nailed it. And one of our favorite songs on the album is We Share the Same Story. So do you have a song that stands out to you as being the most memorable?
That song is a marathon, first of all. I love it. It's a marathon. And it's really touching, actually, especially since we just talked about the bond between Shaggy and Scooby, which is exactly what that song is about. For me, the most memorable song, and I do think a lot of my castmates would agree on this, is the Act 1 finale. I don't know what it is about it. We have this huge dance and this huge party song, and then we go to this song that's just called Margaretta's MIA. And I know you talked with Christelle, who plays Margaretta, and it's just this moment where we all are on stage, just like belting our faces off, singing this bit, and I think for the most part, whenever we're doing a sound check before the shows, we get into the theaters and we get it, and we all want to do that song. That's the song we want to sing the most. And I think the reason why that's the song is because it's when we're the most together as an ensemble. Then to pivot to actually talk about it, like to find a song that I think speaks to me specifically. For me, it's always Foodie, because it's the song that sets the tone of the show for me specifically, because I get to sort of go on stage for the first time every performance and really establish that bond between myself and the actor playing Scooby, but between Shaggy and Scooby. You know, I sing about food, and we're doing the least helpful thing to the actual mission, where the characters are fully established in that song alone. So even if you had never seen Scooby-Doo before and you went to see the show, you would immediately understand who these characters are from that song alone. And I think that's really special. And for me, it acts as sort of like a cornerstone and an anchor for the rest of the show of, this is the character and this is who I am. So I never really have to worry about, am I being true to the character? It's like, no, as long as we're following that path from Foodie onwards, it's great.
That's fantastic, because from the kind of snippets we've seen of the show, and of course listening to the album on release day, you kind of paint a picture. And like you say, Foodie sets up the character of Shaggy and Scooby, that the relationship that we're meant to care about. And so going through the album, you can get a picture of that's what makes something like We Share the Same Story pack the punch that it does. Because like when I first listened to it, obviously I think the world of Scooby, but lyrically it's kind of like, this is so different. This is like a genuinely heartfelt and emotional song, and it's kind of like, without Foodie to set up that relationship, even with such a song like that, it could almost fall flat. But just based on what you're saying and from other cast members that we've spoken to, it sounds like this show has just been so much fun to do. So I guess if you were to pick maybe a favorite moment from performing so far, what would it be?
Ooh, all right, we're getting into the hard questions here. I guess that's a tricky one, because I do think that one of the biggest things, and it's really hard to beat this, is that we've been preparing to do this show since 2020. And to actually have been able to do it, and it didn't really hit me until we started the second leg of the tour, that we were doing this show. We were finally doing it. That was a really, really powerful moment. I think for me, it was when we had that first packed house. We had almost sold out every ticket. I don't remember where it was. It was somewhere in, what was it? I think it may have been Saginaw, or it doesn't matter. It's somewhere around the New York, Pennsylvania area. And the people, they just loved it. They were happy to be out. They were happy to be at the theater. There were so many Scooby fans, and I just thought of an actual answer. We were in Michigan, yeah, and Saginaw, Michigan. Now I'm all messed up on as where I've been, but we were in Michigan, and I remember specifically. My parents had come to this show. They had come across the border, and they'd come to see the show there. And my father, being the person he is, like requested in the form of a demand that we be available to take pictures with him and his friends and stuff like that after the show. And so I took the liberty of gathering the rest of the Mystery Inc. and we went out on stage after the show. We were totally not allowed to do that. Absolutely breaking the rules. And people started coming down to the stage. And it was the only time that we've really had a chance to interact with the audience, because usually after the show we get out of costume and we have to put away the puppets and the props and stuff like that and help out the tech team and get everything in their boxes. So we don't get out of the theater until about an hour, maybe an hour and a half after the show. So we never really get any audience interaction time. And at that point, we got to see people. We didn't get in any trouble or anything like that overall, but it was really, really nice to see these fans, and a bunch of really nice things came out on Instagram the day after of people who had taken a few pictures and had just sort of had really nice things to say about the show and about each of us. And that was the most special moment, I think. It was unintentional, impromptu, against the rules, but it was a really magical moment.
It just sounds incredible, especially like you say, that kind of face-to-face interaction with people that I guess like they've just seen you and your performance, and like coming fresh off that just to get their feedback and just seeing their faces afterwards must have been just incredible to witness. But I suppose going from like the most memorable moment, are there any funny moments that's happened while performing?
Oh, there's plenty of funny moments that happen during the performance itself. Oh, I mean, there was one time when we had gone through intermission, and there's this sort of wooden box that is left on stage at the end of Act 1, and it's supposed to be struck, but it just didn't get struck on this particular day. And I remember seeing it from the wing just before entering for the second act of the show. And I know I have to go up those stairs, and so does Scooby. And because of the nature of the costume, it's very difficult for the actor to fully see everything. So I just looked at it and I was like, and I'm pretty practiced, I think, in the art of subtly fixing things on stage that are not supposed to be the way they are. But I just looked at it and I was like, grabbed it and ran it off stage and came back. And there's nothing else to do, because otherwise it's a bit of a hazard, and we really can't have that. It's not that funny. A lot of funny things haven't really happened on stage. The show's been pretty consistent, and we're very diligent about making sure that everything happens the way it happens. Obviously, we have a lot of backstage shenanigans and stuff like that, as every production, and as you get more comfortable with people. But overall, I'm trying to think of an actual funny story to give you, but I'm not sure if there's anything that's worthy of outside of that story of just the mishap. I mean, I'm sure there is something, but I'm completely blanking on it right now.
Yeah, no, that's no problem at all. Like, you've shared so many stories with us today. We're just so grateful, and I don't know. We live in such a different kind of era now, whereas we've got the internet, the stuff like YouTube, and obviously vocal feedback that you get from audience members, be it in the form of clapping or, like you say, interacting with people face to face in that thing that you described where you met people. But what has your overall response been to what you've seen of the feedback of the show, and specifically your performance, I guess?
So far, it seems really, really amazing. I mean, I personally don't actively seek out feedback, because it's I've just sort of in my past just sort of like, either if I seek it out and I have a struggle with expectation as a person. So if I seek it out and I'm looking for something good, or if I seek it out and I find something bad, it can affect me in certain ways that I don't really want. So I try to just sort of stay focused on what I'm doing, and stay focused that I'm working on it from my perspective. And so when I go on stage and I perform Shaggy, I'm looking to do Shaggy well from my perspective. And I just can only hope that other people feel the same way. I will check all of the reviews and stuff when we're done. Then I'll go back and I'll read and I'll see what people thought. But from what I have seen and from what people have shared with me and from the experiences on Instagram after that show in Michigan, it seems like people are really, really, really having a good time and really loving the show. And I'm super grateful for that. Especially because it's been such a long time coming, and I do feel like the entire cast is so passionate about the show and happy to be doing it.
Well, we've certainly only heard positive things, so I think even after the show, when you go and like dive into the reviews as much as possible, I do only think there's positive things to be seen there. And you're scheduled to perform again on the 1st of June, so what part of returning to the show are you excited about the most?
I am excited about two things the most, I think. I'm excited to get back on the road, to see more places. I'm excited to see the cast again and to get back together and to do it. I'm excited to see, I'm going to give you so many more examples. It's not just two. I'm excited to see the audiences again and to have the opportunity to sort of go out and perform this show. There's some amazing elements of it. I totally omitted that one of my personal favorite songs in the show is it called Dreamland? The sort of the bad guy song, the Ayamanco song, sung by my good friend Justin, who is a phenomenal performer. And I'm excited to see him again because he's in BC, and like I said, bringing everybody back together because we're spread out when we're apart, and we don't really get that much time to see each other. So it's really nice to see them, and it's going to be amazing to see the audiences, like I said, and to be able to step back into the role of Shaggy, because in a lot of ways Shaggy's very different from me as a person, especially now that I'm an adult. But I, in a lot of ways now, associate myself with him, and as do other people. Sometimes people now call me Shaggy, friends of mine and stuff like that. But I'm really excited to sort of to get back in touch with him after a month, 2 months, because we did the one show in the Canadian premiere in Laval, but it's just one show, right? And to go and spend a couple days just really being back in touch with that is a really nice thing with my little chin beard.
And I'm sure, as you said, you're looking forward to seeing the audience. They're looking forward to seeing you as well. So where can people get tickets to see this?
I believe it's ScoobyLiveTour.com/tickets is the best place to go. You can go through there. They're updating it all the time whenever new shows come up. And we're hoping to see some new dates popping up on there within the next couple months. It's a bit of a strange time right now as everyone's kind of getting back to it. But we shall see.
And we'll be sure to leave the link in the description for anyone who's wanting to get tickets, and like you say, to keep up to date on things like that, because they're always announcing new dates. And I guess with that in mind, we'll ask this for every interview that we do with the live show, but it was speculated that this could come to the UK eventually. That had been in the original plans. Has there been any more updates or news on that?
So what I can say is that I, as somebody who is also a producer, I know that they want desperately to take it to the UK. So it's not for a lack of wanting, but there has not been any official news as of yet. I will recommend stay in the loop. The next couple months, years will reveal a lot as to the future of this show and where it's going to go. Because we're still kind of in the US tour, and we're going to kind of figure that out. But once the US tour is officially concluded, there will probably definitely be more dates.
That's exactly what we'd love to hear.
Like after every single one of these interviews that we've done with the cast of the show, we always say, if we possibly ask them enough, will they just come to the UK? And now we're just waiting for that time when we just go on and it's they're coming to the UK, we're all going, 100% going. And I guess my final question before we wrap up is, do you have any social media that you wish to shout out?
Oh, my social media is barren. I don't do a lot. I know I should, but I don't. I would just shout out the Scooby-Doo Instagram, the Scooby Live Tour, or at Scooby Live Tour. I would shout out my own, but I've got 5 posts and I post once in a blue moon, so I won't even bother with that.
Well, that will be linked in the description, the Scooby Instagram, so I will make sure everyone goes and follow that. And I guess that concludes our interview today. Thank you so much for coming on. It's just been amazing to hear from you. And we always love doing the interviews with the cast of the show because it's just always such positive energy. It's just amazing to do. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thank you so much to everyone watching this today. As always, you can find all Rhianna's social links in the description down below, along with our link tree, which gives you all the details that you can ever want about us. So yeah, I hope that everyone sticks around for future interviews, and please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.